Because at least Vice Chair Young is new to the Extended Learning Committee this year, and we hope to have another member starting tomorrow, I wanted to just sort of go over some general elements of what extended learning shops tend to do at universities. And what issues we're sort of facing right now, both pre-COVID and some elements that COVID has exacerbated. There's a long standing history of academic innovation in extended learning and adult education departments at American colleges and universities. And this makes a lot of sense when you consider that alternative education pathways and formats have always been needed by adult students. So it makes sense that non-traditional students are going to need non-traditional forms of college. The 1970s really represented a major shift in adult education. That's kind of the picture on the top. That's an actual adult education classroom from the 1970s. And both Vice Chair Young and current trustee Donna Marie Brown, who are members of this committee, can attest to the importance of adult education. Vice Chair Young did his undergraduate work at Michigan State Universities as a non-traditional student, and Trustee Murray Brown just finished a graduate degree as a non-traditional working adult student. Extended learning really started out being night school, right? Do you remember that old comedy, The Night School? It started out being nights and weekends, right? And no one really knew that adult education was going on unless they left their coffee cups over the weekend, and people found them on 8 a.m. class on Monday morning. But even these small modifications of traditional residential college experience, having courses at night and on weekends, were the seeds of innovation that have found their way onto the traditional population, or into the traditional population on American college campuses. So alternative delivery times, nights and weekends, alternative structures, accelerated 8-week or sometimes 6-week courses, alternative formats like correspondence courses were the foundation for distance education that we're witnessing right now, both synchronous in terms of using ITV, interactive television technology that really was popular in the 80s and is now kind of back in the form of Zoom, and asynchronous online, which kind of began in the 1990s in full force. It's our belief that higher education, especially public higher education, and especially regional comprehensive public higher education, has an obligation to provide educational access to all students, regardless of their age or their ability to come to a campus and learn in person. So the summary of this is that extended learning and adult education have been at the forefront of many trends in higher education because adult students have always needed a different kind of access than we've traditionally provided. In addition to online education, direct assessment competency-based education is becoming increasingly popular among adult students. CBE, as it's called, direct CBE, is a pretty controversial trend in adult higher education. It actually takes special permission from the feds and from the Higher Learning Commission, in which students learn the content and achieve competencies required for a full academic credential wherever they wish, by taking a MOOC, through work experience, by taking maybe a traditional course, joining the circus, however they're going to learn or meet the competencies required for an academic credential. They choose where they're going to learn it. And they come to the university to be tested for competency and credential. So it's a completely different role for traditional higher education in the adult educational experience. Western Governors University has been doing this for decades. The University of Wisconsin's system and Northern Arizona are some recent entrants into this market. And I'm not proposing that we do it, although Northern Arizona is very much like Northern Michigan University. If you've ever been to Flagstaff, it's very similar. And there are many issues with it. Financial aid is one of them. I mean, financial aid is based on seat time, and in direct assessment competency-based education, there is no seat time. And so the feds haven't really figured out how to award federal financial aid for someone going through this type of program. I'm not advocating that we do this or that we even explore that at this time. I just want to let you know so some of the further steps that extended learning shops are taking to meet the needs of adult students who can't come to a campus. But even less controversial trends in higher education can be traced to adult and extended education. So, for example, the direct connection between higher education to careers has its roots in adult education, mainly at community colleges. Prior learning assessment, which we'll talk about in a few minutes, or credit for prior learning, has its roots in adult education as a mechanism for allowing adult students to get academic credit for what they already know. Even time to degree, or the cost of college, or the transferability of credit, or clear pathways to graduation that Jerry Daniels mentioned this morning, that they're very sensitive to, that traditional students are very sensitive to now, had their roots in adult education. And it's been a long-standing rule of thumb and a piece of knowledge that the three most important elements to adult students are: do you have the program that I want? And can I get there in a way that's, one, time efficient and cost efficient, right? They're playing it for them. They're usually paying themselves for it this time around. They want to know, do you have the program that I want? Will it get me the job or promotion that I want? And then how much is it going to cost, and how much time is it going to take me? So you can even see those elements. We really weren't talking about that with traditional students 10 or 20 years ago. Now we're talking about those same issues with our on-campus traditional students. So although adult students comprise a completely different student population than traditional residential students, I mean, that's why we have a global campus, right? A global campus is set up for adult students with everything is different in it. Student services, the way we recruit, everything is different in the global campus. So although adult students comprise a completely different student population, and there will always be campuses for traditional students to come and take classes face-to-face and have a college experience and mature, the world is changing quickly, and the lines between traditional and non-traditional students are blurring. Gone are the days in which a majority of on-campus students are 18, they don't work more than 15 hours a week, and they live on campus, and they graduate in 4 years. It just isn't happening anymore. Traditional students are taking gap years before they come to college. They're working more than they ever have before, and they're transferring credits between institutions more than ever. In fact, according to the US Department of Education, 74% of students are considered non-traditional, a category that includes being independent for financial aid purposes, having one or more dependents, being a single caregiver, not having a traditional high school diploma, etc. So extended learning and adult education are going to continue to play a role in adjusting to the ever-changing landscape in higher education. I'm absolutely convinced of that. And one of the ways that extended learning will play a role in meeting the needs of students as the world changes is in terms of the 60-year curriculum. We've been talking about lifelong learning for decades, but until recently, there really wasn't a highly structured model for what it really means. It was it was more of a sort of pithy statement saying you need to learn your entire life. But no one ever had a structured proposal on how you'd actually do that, right? And until recently, the changes in the nature of work, especially now that COVID's hit, the role of higher education and work, changes in technology, changes in the higher education landscape, and all exacerbated by the pandemic, have culminated in an approach to lifelong learning called the 60-year curriculum. And at the core of it is people are going to have to upskill their entire lives, right? Jobs are changing and information is changing faster than we can keep up. And so we've known forever that we don't teach someone everything they need to know in the 4 years that they're with us at Northern, or 2 years, and that they're going to have to keep learning throughout their lives. This is a structured model for how that can work. Extended learning professionals have been talking a lot about the 100-year life. And so not only are there going to be changes in work and in the technology. Sorry, I lost my. The nature of work and in technology and how that changes work, there are changes in demographics and lifespan or life expectancies. And so people are living longer. And so this idea of the 100-year life is we're quickly approaching the point where the life expectancy will be close to 100. Well, that means that you're going to be in the workforce for 60 years. And if you're going to be working for 60 years, we need a curriculum, an educational system that supports your need to upskill and to learn more through that 60-year period, thus the 60-year curriculum. Gone are the days when students come to us at 18, leave at 22, and never engage in formal education after that. And we want to be involved in that, right? As universities, especially public universities, we want to be involved in continuing to educate folks, because we know that there are private sector businesses that will do it if we don't. We've already seen, Microsoft credentials, Google credentials that are educational experiences with some sort of credential backing them that students are considering or adults are considering. So we need to find a way to find that we need to find a way to meet the needs of adult students. One of them is, providing educational experiences throughout a lifetime. And another is figuring out this articulation between non-credit experience and credit experience. And we know that it's been a staple in adult learning for a long time. They want to be able to, they don't have to learn about what they already know, right? And so our next topic is prior learning assessment that will speak to it. We need to be really strategic and thoughtful about if we're gonna develop a 60-year curriculum about how someone could come into the university and out in multiple on-ramps and off-ramps and be able to parlay what they've learned in a non-credit setting into an academic credit credential if they choose to do so. So again, a major part of that is going to be prior learning assessment. It's been a staple of extended learning that will undoubtedly play a role in the 60-year curriculum implementation. And there are a number of varieties of prior learning assessment, or PLA. It's also called credit for prior learning. And we do these at Northern, and we've done them for quite a few years. The two in green are two forms of credit for prior learning or prior learning assessment that are more appropriate for traditional students. And the ones below it in black are really more tailored for adult students. There are a lot of misconceptions about what prior learning assessment is. Just telling folks before I started this, whenever I put it in tablet mode, bad things happen. So there are a number of myths about, one is that it's sort of life credit, and prior learning assessment is not credit for being alive, right? It's not even credit for an experience, it's credit for prior learning. So it's a system for assessing whether someone has met a competency or knows something, just like you'd have an assessment in a formal academic course. So it's not credit for experience or credit for life, it's credit for learning. It's also not bonus credits. You don't get extra above and beyond what you get from taking a course or from getting an academic credential in a more traditional way. Another misnomer is that students who use PLA take fewer credits than students who don't, and transfer PLA credits to different institutions, and it simply isn't true. In fact, we know that the completion rate is much higher for students who have credit for prior learning, and so they end up taking more credits if they've succeeded in getting some prior learning assessment credit than if they haven't. Again, PLA gives away credits that students would normally earn by taking a course simply isn't true. In fact, the way the competitive landscape is now, If you don't have a system for prior learning assessment for adult students, you're at a competitive disadvantage, right? One, because it just sends a message to adult students that we realize that if you've been out in the working world for 30 years as a clerk, maybe you know something about accounting, right? And you don't have to start out from square one. And it sends the message that we realize that you haven't been just, dialing it in for the 30 years that you've been on the job. You've actually been learning something. So why PLA is important? Most students say, in this statistic, and it's a little bit old, it's from 2013, 75% of Americans would be more likely to enroll in higher education if they knew they could get credit for things that they already know. Just gonna have to take this out of a tablet mode and see if I can get it to much better. And from the university perspective, a survey of colleges and universities suggests that PLA is important to higher education institutions as well. It's related to increased enrollments. Again, it sends an adult-friendly message to prospective students, increased retention. Students who go through PLA enroll more consistently in higher education and drop out less. The completion rates, as I said before, are often 2 times higher if someone has earned some PLA credit than if they haven't. And again, I think these statistics are related to the fact that the 3 most important elements to adult students are, do you have the program that I want? What's the cost and time to degree? And if I can earn credit for prior learning, those are courses or credits that I don't have to pay for, and that won't impede or slow down my progress towards a degree, and then hopefully a promotion or a change of career that I'm hoping will result from my earning a degree. So that's it in a nutshell. It's warp speed, and we can talk much more about this. This is meant to be an overview. In fact, Stacy Boyer Davis, who was the extended learning scholar for the past year, developed a really nice standardized system for global campus students to demonstrate credit for prior learning, mainly using portfolio. And like I said, we already do these things here. What we're doing in the global campus is we're trying to standardize it and make it as easy as possible, not only for global campus students to be able to demonstrate what they already know, but for faculty. I mean, the last thing we want is for online students to be knocking, even virtually, at a faculty member's door and saying, hey, I want to test out of your class, or it's called challenging a class, which I don't think is a great term. I want to challenge your class, and the faculty member doesn't even know what they're talking about, and there's no system or liaison between the student and the faculty member. So the use of PLA is completely up to the departments. We have departments who aren't interested at all in engaging in prior learning assessment, and we have other departments that are very interested in offering that opportunity, not only to global campus students, but perhaps to some on-campus traditional students as well. But we're focusing right now on the global campus students. So she would be more than happy to present to you either at a formal board meeting like this, or if you're interested in a more private discussion or a separate discussion, a longer discussion than a half hour, we could definitely do that. It's going to be really important as we move into the future.
All right, thank you, Steve. I was just point out something I forgot to mention at the beginning. We also have several other Board of Trustee members sitting in on this meeting today, and thank you for joining. And given the rules of our committee structure, only committee members can ask questions. So Donna, I guess that, or Trustee Murray Brown, you and I are the ones that can ask questions. So I would ask you first if you have any questions of Steve before we move on.
I don't. No, thank you.
Okay. Just a quick question on the PLAs. How do we know, like in terms of Northern right now, like how many credits are awarded for students that come here with prior learning experience?
That's a really good question. That's kind of where we start. Where we started was surveying a couple of years ago of surveying departments to see who was doing it at all. And those data are not easy to find because departments collect them differently. And like I said, some departments weren't doing it at all. I wish I had a really good answer for you. I don't know, but I know that it's low. We simply don't do a lot of it at all. There are a few departments that offer what are called challenge exams. And it's basically a comprehensive exam that a student can test out of if they think that they already know what or have met the competencies of the course. Through the global campus, we've done none. Stacy Boyer-Davis actually piloted the system that we put together to see how it worked with one student who had some military credit. He was a veteran. So he had some experiences in the military that thought might rise to the level of college level learning, and lo and behold, they did. But that was the first documented pilot case for global campus adult students challenging or engaging in a PLA process through portfolio.
Okay, so there's no way we measure this or track it to, because I think it's a really important program, and to me, it's, you know, the more it's utilized, the better in my mind. So I'm just wondering how widespread it is at Northern. So.
Yeah, it hasn't traditionally been very widespread, and we could probably take some good guesses because off Northern, we don't assign a grade for a credit earned through prior learning, but there are other reasons that there might not be a grade assigned as well. So they would be estimates, and I'm not sure the juice is worth the squeeze in terms of it. The number is going to be low.
Okay.
I know that.
All right. Well, we appreciate you making this presentation, and the interesting thing for me is you know, being chair of this committee this year, and I know Donna served on it before, so has some experience, but it's always interesting to me because it seems like every time I sit down and talk to you, it's like I'm seeing into the future of what really is out there and where I think higher ed is going. And that's why I think the work in this area is so important. And, you know, as you pointed out, I was a non-traditional student, but that was many, many years ago when there was really no such thing. I mean, and Donna is a more recent non-traditional student, but, you know, when I was going through that, you know, most universities didn't offer programs for someone like me that had to go to school at night because I was working full time. So this is a really exciting thing for me because I think it opens up those opportunities. And I think on that top slide, the quote from the student we had just sums it up beautifully in terms of the importance of this to us and to the education community as a whole. So
I agree. And I should note again, we do prior learning assessment at the university. It's not like we've been ignoring it at all. In fact, I mean, like AP is really common, but that's mainly for traditional students. So we do some of this. It's just credit for prior learning through portfolio and through challenge exams, especially for completely online students, is pretty rare.
okay. All right. Thank you, Steve. Donna, is there anything else you have?
No, I do have just a quick question. What would be in your mind, Steve, the greatest opportunity you see that we as board members can think about if you were if we were to advance this work? What are the opportunities that you see that we could be helpful in supporting? Well,
again, I think figuring out that articulation between credit and non-credit experiences. Now, we don't want to give people credit for things that they don't know, that don't equate to having taken a course. So there's going to be a real balance between that element of the 60-year curriculum. The slide that I put up with the graphic, the infographic is, I don't know if you noticed it in your handouts, there are cybersecurity jobs and competencies listed in there. Cybersecurity is the place where we're testing this out to see if we can develop non-credit educational experiences in the Cybersecurity Institute, which is all about non-credit cybersecurity. If a student goes through that and completes industry credentials and then decides, hey, I really like this, I think I would like a academic credential, is there a way that we could parlay that into academic credit in an academic program at the university? So I think that's a balancing act that I think we're going to really need to think through. And then just in terms of program development, I think we have a real opportunity as a university. We have enough resources to provide a really high quality educational experience. and we're small enough to be nimble, right? So I think we're in that sweet spot where we're not so small that we're just struggling to stay alive, but we're not so big that we're turning a massive, coal boat. And I think help in that arena, like can you help us find ways to leverage the flexibilities and the nimbleness that we have because of who we are.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you, Steve. And there being no further business for the committee, I move we adjourn at 3:44, 1 minute ahead of time. So thank you.
Thank you.
We ready to go, Tammy?